Okay, so get this. Supreme Court. And there's laughter. Not just, a quiet chuckle, but real loud laughter echoing in the courtroom.
Hmm.
And then, just like that, it flips. Tears. Actual sobbing. The whole thing. Well, it just blew up online.
Yeah, it really did.
So today, we're diving into this pretty extraordinary clash between former Florida AG Pam Bondi and Justice Amy Coney Barrett.
It was definitely not your typical day at the court. The sources we've looked at, they paint this picture of a really intense confrontation, right?
Yeah.
Ending in this, well, very public emotional display.
Exactly.
So our goal here is to really unpack how it unfolded. Look at the key moments, the arguments back and forth, and what dynamics were actually at play to cause such a dramatic scene.
Right. Trace that whole arc. What were they even arguing about? I mean, it was some kind of fictional ethics case Bondi was presenting.
That's right, a hypothetical scenario involving prosecutorial ethics.
So what led from that to tears? What were the forces that made this go viral? Let's start at the beginning. The atmosphere when it kicked off.
Okay, so the reports, they set up this real contrast. Bondi comes in with this described as a swagger, real palpable bravado.
Okay, so projecting confidence, maybe even a bit confrontational.
That seems to be the suggestion, yeah. An assertive approach right from the get-go.
And Karshaw, Justice Barrett, how was she described?
As, well, the opposite, really. Measured intellect, unshakable poise, just this sense of calm authority. And even her first question to Bondi was pretty pointed. Miss Bondi, do you take this court seriously?
Wow, straight out of the gate. That sets a tone.
It really does. It adds this layer of tension immediately.
Yeah.
It's not just about the legal points anymore.
Right, and Bondi's response, just dismissive.
Pretty much. Something like, I'm here to win justice, let's proceed. Standard enough, but given the question.
Yeah, it kind of brushes off the implication, doesn't it? Like, let's just get on with it.
Exactly. Doesn't exactly lower the temperature in the room.
Okay, so the tension's already there. Then comes the laughter. When did that start?
That happened when Justice Barrett challenged Bondi's legal argument, called it shaky. Remember, this is within that fictional ethics dispute.
Ah, okay. So Barrett's engaging on the substance, questioning the legal reasoning.
Right. And that's when Bondi apparently let out this mocking chuckle, and her reply was pretty sharp. Shaky, you're out of your depth, Justice.
Whoa. Okay, that's bold in the Supreme Court.
Extremely unconventional.
Sure.
And Barrett's response was immediate, firm. You'll respect this court.
Laying down the law, asserting the authority of the court.
Absolutely. Making it clear that's not acceptable. But Bondi apparently pushed back.
She didn't back down.
No. She said something like, respect. I'm here to expose flaws, justice, not bow.
So she's framing her role as challenging the court itself, not just arguing a case.
That seems to be the dynamic emerging, a fundamental clash in how they see the interaction.
Which then leads Barrett to say.
Barrett's response was direct. Expose your mockeries, misplaced Miss Bondi. I'll prove it.
Misplaced mockeries. So Barrett's framing the laughter itself as out of line, as flawed.
Precisely. Not just reacting to the disrespect, but calling the mockery itself ineffective, almost irrelevant. Like, go ahead, mock. I'll dismantle it.
And Bondi keeps going. Right. There's that line about the ivory tower.
Yeah, she apparently said, Barrett's court's ivory tower can't match my experience.
Ah, the classic academic versus real-world fighter play.
Exactly. Trying to undermine Barrett's authority by painting her as detached. But Barrett countered quickly.
Oh.
Something like, ivory tower, my judgment's grounded, Miss Bondi. You're misstepping. So turning it back on Bondi, saying her steps are wrong.
And Barrett then accuses the mockery itself of hurting Bondi's case.
Yes, she points out that this misplaced mockery is actually undermining Bondi's own legal position. It's a strategic point.
So not just be respectful, but your disrespect is bad strategy.
Exactly. Barrett's analyzing it tactically. But Bondi apparently just laughed again, defiantly, claimed she was exposing limits, said, I'm ready.
This is really escalating.
It is. And Barrett's reply was sharp. Ready? You're reckless, Miss Bondi. I'll restore decorum.
Okay, so drawing a clear line. This stops now.
Right. Making it clear her priority is the court standards, the decorum. There's this real tension between Bondi's aggressive style and, well, the expectations of the Supreme Court.
Then Bondi brings up this weakness idea. Calls Barrett a scholar, not a fighter.
Yeah, weakness. You're a scholar. Justice, not a fighter. I'll dominate. It's very personal, very adversarial.
Trying to frame intellectualism as a liability in a fight.
Pretty much. Playing into that trope. But Barrett flipped it back.
How so?
She replied, reckless. Your laughter's a distraction, Miss Bondi. I'll expose your weakness, suggesting the emotional display is Bondi's vulnerability.
Oh, interesting. So the laughter isn't strength, it's a cover for weakness.
That's the implication. But Bondi doubled down again on the dominant thing. Said Barrett's rulings wouldn't silence her, she'd laugh louder.
Just refusing to yield. It sounds less like a legal argument and more like a battle of wills.
It certainly seems to be moving in that direction. Bondi keeps using laughter as this weapon, this act of defiance.
And Barrett's response.
Cutting. Louder. You're unraveling, Miss Bondi. Your case won't stand. Directly linking the behavior to the failure of the legal argument.
Bondi then tries to frame herself as the challenge to Barrett. Says Barrett is slipping.
Yeah, a very direct, personal attack on the justice's competence. A huge gamble in that setting.
How did Barrett handle that direct challenge?
Stayed unwavering. Unraveling, Miss Bondi. Your mockery's reckless, your argument's weak. Just reinforcing her points, refusing to get drawn into a personal spat.
But Bondi keeps pushing, saying she's fought tougher battles, Barrett's outclassed.
Right. Another attempt to diminish Barrett, dismiss her experience by comparing it to Bondi's own self-perception of being a tough fighter.
It's like she's trying to impose her own rules of engagement.
Seems like it. But Barrett counters by elevating reason. Said Bondi was undermining the court and was no match for reason.
Reason versus
What?
Just aggression.
That seems to be the contrast Barrett is drawing. And then Bondi accuses Barrett of bias, says she'll laugh you off.
Accusing a justice of bias. Wow, that's a serious charge.
Extremely serious in that context. Barrett's response was to label Bondi a provocateur and vow to restore dignity, basically rejecting the accusation and refocusing on the court's integrity.
Okay, and then the reports suggest Barrett's approach shifted slightly, became more focused on precision.
Yeah, that's right. There's a shift. She says something like, dignity. Your laughter's a flaw, Miss Bondi. You'll face my judgment. It sounds more formal, more authoritative.
Framing the laughter not just as bad behavior, but as a flaw relevant to the judgment.
Exactly. Moving beyond reacting to assessing it as part of the case, in a way. Bondi apparently tried one more time with the academic angle, saying words won't sway her.
Underestimating the power of legal reasoning, perhaps?
Maybe. Because Barrett's reply was apparently very confident. Words. My reason cuts, Ms. Bondi. Brace yourself.
Ooh, reason cuts. That's powerful, asserting the force of her legal analysis.
Definitely. Highlighting her intellectual authority as the decisive factor, regardless of the theatrics.
But Bondi still keeps going. Brace your court's soft justice. My fight's alive.
Still defiant. Still pushing that fighter versus scholar narrative. But then Barrett delivers a really decisive line.
Which was?
Alive. Oh, you're overreaching this, Bondi. You're done. That feels like a major turning point.
You're done. Yeah, that sounds pretty final. Did Bondi react to that?
Well, she tried to insist she was just starting, but reports suggest her bravado was, starting to crack noticeably by then.
Okay.
And Barrett pressed harder, called the mockery a facade, said Bondi's case was crumbling. And significantly, she apparently cited specific procedural flaws in Bondi's fictional ethics argument.
Ah, so bringing it back to concrete legal issues undermining the substance.
Exactly. Which makes Bondi's claims about winning bigger fights and Barrett being overmatched sound, well, weaker, more desperate.
Right.
And Barrett really hammered that point home. Overmatched, your laughter betrays weakness, Miss Bondi. This court demands substance.
Cutting right through the performance to the lack of substance.
Precisely. Bondi tried one last deflection, saying she was exposing Barrett's limits. Her fight was real.
Grasping at straws, maybe.
It feels that way. The momentum had clearly shifted. Barrett called her a provocateur, again, promised to expose her flaws.
And then came the moment with the precedent. Right. Barrett leans forward.
Yes, that seems like a key visual.
Yeah.
Barrett leans forward and says, flaws, your argument's hollow, Ms. Bondi. You'll face my reason. And then she hits her with a specific precedent.
Which one?
A 2010 ethics precedent, apparently delivered with devastating precision.
Ouch. Citing specific precedent like that, if it directly contradicts your point, that's tough to recover from.
Absolutely. It grounds the argument firmly in established law, moving away from the personal attacks. And Bondi's response showed it.
How so? What did you say?
Just a faltering repeat of the fighter versus academic line. And then this weaker attempt at humor. Academic, I'm your equal justice. Laugh with me.
Wow, from mockery to asking her to share the laughter, that's a big shift.
Huge shift. Shows the pressure was mounting. It clearly didn't work. Barrett's reply was blunt.
Let me guess. You're done.
Pretty much. Burns. You're collapsing, Ms. Bondi. Your case is done. just a direct statement of the situation.
But Bondi still had one more line, the outlast you comment.
One last desperate-sounding claim. Done. I'll outlast you, Justice. Just pure assertion of will at that point.
Almost like she couldn't accept it was over.
Seems that way. But Barrett's next move was, well, it shifted everything again, made it much more profound.
How?
She connected Bondi's actions, her laughter, to the human cost. She said, collapsing, Ms. Bondi, your laughter mocks justice, your case betrays the vulnerable. And she reportedly invoked a hypothetical family suffering because of the kind of prosecutorial overreach they were discussing.
Oh, wow. So making it real, connecting the abstract legal points to human pain.
Exactly. Adding this powerful, emotional, ethical dimension. And it seems to be what finally broke through Bondi's defenses.
Her response?
Weakened. Something about being a judge, not a savior. But Barrett kept her focus on the court's duty to protect people.
And Bondi's voice started to quiver at this point.
Reportedly, yes. Still trying to claim she fought for truth, but sounding increasingly shaky. Barrett just firmly declared, silence, you're overreaching, Ms. Bondi, you're done. Sealing it.
And then came the final part, the really impactful statements from Barrett.
Yes. She said she spoke for those harmed, that their pain guided her, mentioned systemic flaws. It became very affecting.
You could see how that would land heavily.
Immensely. Bondi apparently just whispered something about pain, acknowledging it finally.
And Barrett pressed on.
Yes, with this mix of resolve and empathy. Strength, your laughter's hollow, Miss Bondi. This court seeks justice. Directly contrasting Bondi's approach with the court's real purpose.
And Bondi's reply was trembling by now, still trying to claim her fight was real.
Yes, but it sounded hollow against Barrett's words. And then came the line that apparently triggered the tears.
What was it?
Hollow laughter, Miss Bondi. Your mockery betrays the broken lives justice serves. Their pain outweighs your fight. And she vividly described that fictional family suffering again.
Just devastating, bringing the consequences right into the room.
Exactly. Bondi's response was fractured. Broken. You're a judge. Justice, not their heart. Her defenses just crumbled.
And Barrett just stayed firm on the court's purpose.
Stood her ground. And as Bondi's voice cracked, tears started. Barrett delivered those final, powerful lines.
What were they again?
Break. I speak for those you've dismissed, Miss Bondi. Their tears demand justice. And then, justice. Your laughter mocked their pain, Miss Bondi. This court rises above.
Wow. Powerful stuff.
Incredibly powerful, elevating the whole exchange. And she concluded simply, tried your points, heard Miss Bondi, but justice prevails.
And the immediate result was chaos.
Pretty much. Bondi sobbing, her team rushing over, cheers for Barrett from the gallery. Apparently, lots of discussion about Bondi's initial, fierceness versus the outcome. And then, of course, it went viral. An unforgettable courtroom moment.
Absolutely unforgettable. So, looking back, what are the main takeaways here?
Well, it really shows the impact of focused, morally grounded argument, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it's contrasted with behavior that comes across as, disrespectful or dismissive.
Right. And Barrett connecting the legal stuff, even fictional stuff, to real human consequences. That was key.
Definitely. That was the turning point. It highlighted the potential real-world impact.
For me, the aha moment is seeing how composure and, reasoned argument just completely dismantled the aggressive tactics. It shows you the hidden stakes, the emotional undercurrents that can be there, even in these really formal settings.
It really does. And it makes you think, doesn't it, about the different roles and expectations in the justice system. How much does demeanor, how you present yourself, actually affect how your arguments land?
Yeah, it's a great question. What carries more weight in that kind of pressure cooker? Is it the passionate fighter approach, or is it the calm, reasoned, morally centered stance we saw from Justice Barrett? Something to think about.
Definitely. It prompts you to reflect on how authority, emotion, and the actual substance of arguments interact. Not just in court, but anywhere people disagree or need to make decisions. Maybe it makes you, the listener, think about how you approach things, both the message and the manner.